Well, I think it really kind of depends initially on your level of flexibility to start with. And I'm going to speak just from the Shapeshifter program. The Shapeshifter program is a program that's about a 60-minute program initially that you go through all the body parts, and you're working up to over a period of few weeks to be able to do a flow routine. Now, the flow routine in itself can be a complete practice, and you
Right.
could easily do the 10 minutes a day and maintain your flexibility.
Okay.
So that's the nice thing about it. So you invest up front. You can't expect to become super flexible and have great
Yeah.
technique
In
in
like a
anything.
week. Yeah.
You can't. It's not going to happen. And that's where my figure skating background comes in, because when I teach yoga, I always look at it from a aesthetic standpoint. I look at body alignment and those kind of things. And that stuff develops gradually. And it also, as people become more connected with their bodies, they're able to feel when they're not in the right position. So again, that's not gonna happen the first day if you haven't been doing anything flexibility wise for a while.
Right. Right. It'll take more ohms than that.
Yes, it would, of course.
Just kidding. So generally, so let me just kind of summarize that for everybody. So you start out with kind of like a little bit longer of a program, and then within a relatively short period of time, you get them down to kind of a maintenance, a flow yoga routine. Is that the idea?
Yes, that's the idea. And
Okay.
actually, the flow yoga routine is actually the whole idea behind it was based on my graduate thesis. When I was trying to figure out what to do for my graduate program thesis, I was like, what can I do to help, people be healthier? And a lot of people through the years, they know what I do. They know that I practice yoga. And they just would come to me and they'd say, Chris, I have cardiovascular training. I mean, got cardio, I've got strength training. I can't go to an hour yoga class 3 times a week. So
Sure.
I'm like, what can we do? What can we do? And I looked at the kind of yoga that I study, and I looked at just, what my own practice was at that time. And it was a flow routine. And I thought, what if I took ranked beginners, and over a course of 6 weeks, I got them ready to do the full flow routine. And all they had to do was 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night. And they had to lay on their back in the position called Shavasana, or
Yeah.
corpse pose. And believe it or not, they couldn't have only had one yoga class. That was the most they could have. So these people had no background in yoga. And in just 6 weeks, they improved hamstring flexibility and upper body strength, which was kind of huge, I thought, for ranked beginners.
Yeah.
And they were feeling, and I didn't really test a little bit for, perceived well-being, and there was a positive increase in perceived well-being, even though it was not significant,
Sure.
statistically significant. But everyone felt better. And I thought, okay, so this is something we can add to the Shapeshifter program. And this is something that I think people will really like to know, that once they gain a level of flexibility, that they can maintain it by doing this simple routine.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I mean, sometimes you think about having to work hard at flexibility and actually gaining a lot of flexibility, and then thinking you have to continue at that same pace to keep it. But what you're saying is really once you get there, you just need a maintenance program that will keep you there, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it works. I mean, it's probably what my practice has consisted of for the last since I did my graduate thesis. I thought, practice what you preach, and I've been doing it almost every day since 2008. So
Since 2008. Okay, so you've been doing that kind of a shorter routine for
shorter
about five
routine.
years.
Yeah, well, through the years I've taken some courses in yoga, so I've had to actually had longer practices as
Right,
well.
right.
But the flow routine has been part of my daily routine for all these years.
What are some other excuses you hear for people when they're apprehensive to maybe trying out some yoga routines?
Well, I mean, again, I think that they feel like, they're going to be sore.
Yeah,
Regardless of their flexibility, they're going to be sore. They're, I guess they're intimidated by, like you'd said earlier, the girls in the tight outfits.
right.
So, again, this is nice because you're in your own home. You don't have to go out into the studio. I mean, although it's nice to get out once in a while, but you don't have to, and you can be in the comfort of your own home and not feel like you have to, look, like everybody else in the room.
Sure. One of the reasons why I started kind of doing my own sort of flow routines and stretches and mobility stuff that I do was because I was taking some yoga classes. And like I said, with the time thing, like I would ride my bike down to the place and then do like a 90-minute thing and then ride my bike home and then take a shower. And I'm like, it took me 3 hours to do yoga, and I
Right.
just don't have the time for that. So I really like the home-based, body weight only, 10-minute routines, things like that. That's awesome.
Well, I think what's, at least the kind of yoga that I study, and really, and I think many yogas are out there, eventually you should be developing your own practice.
Right.
It's called a sadhana. It's your own practice. And you can go all you want out to a studio, but eventually, this is something you should be doing at home, and you need to maybe tailor it to what you need. So you may not get what you need in a class, and that's what's nice. So you've got the flow program, and then you've got a variety of other exercises that, depending on how you feel that day, you can go ahead and just plug them in and plug them into your day.
I'm so happy you said that, because that's like that with diet. You learn a lot of different principles, and then you find what works for you. Or with strength training or cardiovascular conditioning or exercise in general, you learn a lot of things, and then you find what works for you. How do you recommend people go about creating their own practice? Maybe how do they go about finding their weaknesses and so on and so forth?
Well, I think, creating their own, I think, again, I'm taking people who are maybe looking at the Shapeshifter program.
Right,
So
right.
you've learned the basics, you've now applied, you've been able to work up to the flow routine. So, for the maintenance program, you look at where, your areas, maybe it's the areas that you have physical discomfort, areas that that you have weaknesses, tightness. Perhaps you are a golfer. Somebody on our had asked a question recently. Do you have a golfer program? And I said, no, we don't have a program for golfers. However, there's a lot of movements that you can be doing to prepare the body for golf. So there's many joint movements that can be applied throughout the day for golf, for sitting at the desk too long, those kind of things, for sports specific and just general daily activities.
So a lot of yoga is focused on posture, right? And aligning the body in certain positions. What is the biggest postural deficiency you see people have these days?
Hamstring inflexibility.
You think it's the hamstrings, huh?
I think I just see it's the hamstrings, low back. I mean, it's all connected. Your
sure.
hamstrings, low backs, abdominal, all connected. What do you think?
I think the shoulders. I think I totally agree that the hamstrings, but I see this humped shoulder forward thing a lot.
I think you're right. I think for sure if it isn't the absolute truth at this moment, who knows? It's trending that way, because what are we doing? We're becoming a society of this. So absolutely. And you know what? I have seen that more.
Yeah. It's
the majority of athletes that I work with, I work with a lot of skating athletes and football players. So I see, I'm not necessarily looking so much for the shoulder.
For the office workers. Yeah,
right.
Sure. That makes sense. What do you do to fix like a hamstring deficiency? Like what's the easiest stretch that you try to recommend people start with?
Well, one of the ones I do, the one that you do in gym class growing up, where you sit and you got your legs out in front and you grab your toes.
Yeah.
That one, it's like the obligatory
just
stretch.
the pike stretch.
Everybody does it wrong.
Yeah.
They grab their toes, they end up stretching their shoulders. I do that same one, but it's a modified version where you actually, I don't know if you can see me, I'm bringing my knees up to my chest.
That's all right.
You take your legs, wrap your arms around your legs, and give yourself a tight hug. So you start in an upright position and your heels are down, and then you just walk your heels out and hold. And when your thighs come off of your chest, when your quads come off your chest, then you stop.
Okay.
And then you walk it a little further. So you're slowly, and you're stretching what you're supposed to be stretching. You're stretching the low back and you're stretching the hamstrings.
Gotcha. So when you hug onto the legs, you're hugging on underneath the thighs.
Underneath the thighs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's a great way to do it, because I notice like one of the things that people do when they're stretching their hamstrings is, like you said, they overstretch their back, their shoulders, even their neck to some degree. And like, when you look at somebody like a yogi who has fantastic hamstring flexibility, their lower back, the relationship between their tailbone and the middle of their spine is pointing down towards their toes.
Yeah,
it's not pointing up towards the sky when they're doing like a pike position.
And it's not rounded.
Yeah.
It's flat. I mean, the idea eventually in that forward bend position, that seated forward bend, in a perfect world, you take your whole body, you'd be flush against your thighs.
Right.
And that's what we're working toward. But the only way to get there is to gradually stretch the muscles, I think. Otherwise, you're just doing that overstretching back and shoulder thing.
That's a great tip. And do you have any other tips like that you use within your yoga practice that you teach people? Because you just gave us what I like to call a self-correcting exercise. So you give somebody an exercise, and there's no way they can't do it wrong as long as they follow the basic tips. But if you just said do a pike stretch and do it with a flat back the whole time, people could mess that up pretty easily.
Yeah, right.
So what else do you have that you could do that with for us right now?